Hello, good morning. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So after a long time, so festival season is going on. I'm sure you must be busy also. In Mumbai, the picture is different entirely. Especially during Ganesha, when it is overlapping with the Paryushan of the Jain community and Lord Ganesha festival. It's the whole festivity you can see, and all the people almost they stop working during these days, or maybe working with the half efficiency. Anyway, so am I audible? Please let me know.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Good, good, good. So, hmm. so today we wanted to discuss about uh, the asymmetry and why there is asymmetry and what is the problem with the asymmetry. Uh, so first of all, you must know what is asymmetry. When you call asymmetry, the asymmetry is the situation where anytime one follicle is 4 millimeter at least ahead of the rest of the follicle cohort. So when you at that time you call there is a asymmetry. So normally, what is the size correlation with the stimulation potential or ovulation potential? You can say. So if the follicles are small antral follicle, because we can see only antral follicle during sonography. We cannot see pre-antral follicle on sonography. The pre-antral follicle and antral follicle, they're FSH sensitive follicle. And growth before that, from primordial follicle till that stage, is not FSH dependent. But now these follicles are FSH dependent follicle, pre-antral and antral follicle. And antral follicle we can see on sonography because there is a antrum, there is a cavity, there is a fluid collected. So it can be detected on sonography. The follicle size, which is more than 4 millimeter, 4 to 6 millimeter, these are the most ideal follicle who have got ovulation potential. They are absolutely ready to grow once they are exposed to the optimum amount of FSH. And smaller than this follicle are not similarly having the same potential. But still, all the antral follicles are capable, depending on two things: their receptor density of the F for the FSH, receptor density for FSH, gonadotropin, FSH, especially smaller follicle. And second, their FSH threshold. So when whether it is endogenously secreted FSH or exogenously supplemented FSH, when these follicles are exposed to that amount of FSH, then and then they start growing. So we all know FSH threshold uh, theory, and we also know the FSH window. So till the FSH threshold is maintained by FSH, these follicles keep growing, keep growing, keep growing, keep growing. So you have to maintain a certain FSH for follicles to grow. So this is very basic thing. Now, so in that means, suppose if you want to have more follicles, you must increase the sensitivity of the follicle towards FSH. Now, how to increase the sensitivity of the follicle towards FSH? By various ways. The most appropriate or most practical way is by preventing the apoptosis, because this is a continuous procedure. So, prevention of apoptosis and increasing the sensitivity of the follicle towards FSH by creating an androgenic milieu. So if you are creating an androgenic milieu intrafollicular, then it increases the sensitivity of the follicle towards FSH. It prevents or reduces the apoptosis, and this is how the follicles are recruited. Now, see, many times we are very much disappointed that I used testosterone gel, I used DHEA, but there is no significant difference. Say only one follicle make, if you get one follicle extra, it makes it grow. It makes a lot of difference. So especially in case of poor responder, where the number of the follicles are maybe less than 4 or maybe 4 to 9, something less than 9 follicle, and one extra follicle if you get, then that makes a lot of difference. So to increase, you have to increase the sensitivity of the follicle by creating a androgenic environment. Now coming to a threshold. So there are some follicles which has got lower FSH threshold, and they have got great number of the FSH receptors. So these follicles start growing whenever from any source they are exposed to a small amount of FSH. And when this happens, they start growing ahead and they do not care about the rest of the cohort, rest of the fellows, and start growing. And once the dominance is acquired by this follicle, somehow by various signals, it inhibits the growth of the smaller follicle which are left behind because of their higher FSH threshold or lower FSH sensitivity, whatever you say, and this creates a problem. So this is the reason behind the asymmetry. Now, how it practically, when do you suspect that this patient is likely to develop asymmetry and create a problem? So, uh, especially the patient who have got shorter cycle, shorter follicular phase, they have tendency to form a asymmetrical cohort. So, whenever patient says that she has got shorter cycles, she is getting period every 24 days or 25 days or 23 days or 26 days, you should be always alert. And one cycle, even I would advise, in one cycle, you can natural cycle, how it grows, you can study. You call the patient on stimulation, cycle day 3, and see the follicle size. So if you find that some on cycle day 3 only some follicle has reached a 8 9 millimeter, then you suspect that this patient is going to suffer from the asymmetrical growth. So then you have to modify your protocol. Suppose if you are using antagonist protocol, you have to modify the protocol, that we will discuss later on. Suppose if you are, or otherwise you have to switch over to a long agonist protocol, because then and then you'll be able to solve the problem. Now, another question comes. We must, before treating the asymmetry, we must understand the hormonal profile following estradiol and following OC pills. So whenever you start estradiol, there is a quick rise of serum estradiol level and which is capable to suppress the pituitary. But mind you, the estradiol is a weak suppressor of the pituitary. It's a weak suppressor of the pituitary. So pituitary is not completely suppressed. Or in other words, the estradiol does not have capability to keep the pituitary suppressed for a longer period. And that is the reason it has been suggested then whenever you start estradiol in previous cycle, antagonist cycle, then you should not continue estradiol more than 14 days because then pituitary is likely to escape from the inhibition and the follicle may get recruited and the purpose, half of the purpose of starting estradiol is not served. So uh, this is about one fact about the estradiol. Second fact about the estradiol, the moment you stop estradiol, the washout period is approximately 24 hours. So after 24 hours, the suppression is removed from the pituitary and the hormonal profile is similar to what you get on cycle day 3 of the natural cycles. But same is not true with the OC pill. OC pills take 5 days to suppress the pituitary completely. But within 5 days, or you can say after 5 days, from 6th day onwards, you can expect that pituitary is completely suppressed.
Sir, you are muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Oh, yes. Okay. So now, is it fine?
Yes, sir.
Nine.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's not audible.
So where did you listen last? What was the last sentence?
You were talking about the estrogen is a weak suppressor and it washes off after 5 days.
Uh, no, estrogen was out period is 24 hours. 24 hours. So after
what is
that,
that for 5 days?
5 days is OC pills. I'm talking about OC pills.
Okay. That was what we heard last.
Somebody has, Dr. Sindhura has said, message, it is not clear, sir. Voice is breaking. Voice volume is low. Okay, let me do something.
Now it is okay, sir. It was breaking earlier. Now it is okay.
Okay, fine. So the OC pills, once you stop, what happens? The complete recovery of the pituitary is after 5 days. Complete recovery means you can expect after 5 days of the stopping OC pills, whenever the criteria arise, LS surge can occur. But once you stop OC pills, from third day, suppose on third day of the stopping OC pills, please, I'm repeating. After stopping OC pills, on third day, no, sorry, I'm sorry. After stopping OC pills, on 6th day of the OC pills, the hormonal levels are similar to what you get in cycle day 3 of natural cycle. Means after stopping OC pills, from third day, the FSH starts rising And after 5 days of stopping OC pills, the hormonal level of FSH is similar to cycle day 3 of natural cycle. So even after you all must have observed, then for luteal E2 antagonist protocol, luteal E2 protocol and followed by antagonist, we start estradiol on mid-luteal phase, that is 7 days after the documented ovulation, or you can say 7 to 9 days before expected rate of menstruation. Am I right? So if you do that, you do for three purposes. The rationale behind, I'm repeating this, we have discussed in our verdict conference. Still, I'm repeating for those who had not attended. The purpose of starting estradiol in the mid-luteal phase of the previous cycle, one, you want to suppress the pituitary and you do not want any follicle to be recruited before you start stimulation. That's one purpose. Second purpose, estradiol increases the granulosa cell sensitivity towards FSH. So when you start FSH, the sensitivity is better. And third, it is hypothesized that after suppression of the pituitary by estradiol, when estradiol is stopped, because it is a weak suppressor, there is a rebound bout of FSH, and which helps in the recruitment of the follicle which are already sensitized and having good FSH receptor sensitivity. Having said this, uh, yes, it looks fine, but practically, even after starting estradiol, adding estradiol in the previous luteal phase, still you suffer from asymmetry and recruitment of the follicle. For the simple reason, the estradiol is a weak suppressor of the pituitary. So you need to do something else if you really do not want asymmetry. Now, suppose if you are starting OC pills, even after OC pills, after 5 days of washout period, when you call the patient on period day second or period day third or maybe sixth day of the stopping OC pills, still in few cases you get a recruitment of the follicles. That means when there is a proven asymmetry or when there is the highest possibility of the asymmetry, then these are not just sufficient measure. You need to do something else. Now we are coming to a preventive aspect of the asymmetry. So how to prevent asymmetry? So normally now most of people, they are using antagonist protocol because they find it more patient friendly, clinician friendly. There are a lot of arguments and counter arguments for this protocol, antagonist protocol, and against antagonist protocol. So let us not enter into a controversy. We will discuss at some other time. So suppose you are using antagonist protocol and still either you have suffered from asymmetry or you do not want to take risk at all because the patient is having a shorter cycle. And during a natural cycle, you had seen some recruitment of the follicle. So what you're going to do? You do a luteal E2 antagonist protocol. That's a very good protocol. What you do in that? After starting estradiol in the mid-luteal phase, after 2 days of estradiol, start antagonist for 3 days. And within third day of antagonist, or maybe at the most fourth day of antagonist, 100% patient is likely to bleed. 100% patient is likely because this antagonist causes rapid leukolysis. And because of the rapid leukolysis, uh, patient gets the menses. But the pituitary is, and you all know, menses has nothing to do with the pituitary. The menses is progesterone withdrawal reading. So once, because of this luteolysis, the progesterone support is withdrawn completely, and endometrium is no more supported by progesterone. So menstruation is ensued. But as C was on antagonist, the pituitary doesn't get chance to secrete more FSH enough for the recruitment of the follicle. And that is why the follicle, when you examine the patient on the second day of the menses, you will find absolutely symmetrical follicular cohort. So at least the beginning problem is solved. Now this is not the end of the problem. Even after this, because of the differential sensitivity of the follicular cohort, still at the starting of the stimulation, in spite of follicle being symmetrical, you realize that after maybe 5 days of stimulation or 6 days of stimulation, some follicle have overgrown and some follicles majority of the follicles are left behind. We'll discuss little later. So if you are using antagonist protocol, best thing you to do is luteal E2 use luteal E2 and antagonist protocol. That will solve most of your asymmetry problem. And second option is uh, switch over to long agonist protocol. So long agonist protocol, you all know, we start from the mid luteal phase, or if it is a OCP pre-treated cycle, then at least 1 to 5 days of overlapping of the agonist with the OC pills we do. I normally do 3 days overlapping, and once the patient gets the menses, we start the stimulation, and 99% of the time uh, there is no asymmetry. If at all any follicle, if you are saying, but if you measure the E2 level and LH level, they are quite within normal limit. Assuming that proves that the follicle which you are seeing is not the active follicle. Uh, so long agonist protocol, we don't go into the detail. So you switch over to long agonist protocol. The problem with the long agonist protocol is higher consumption of the gonadotropin. That is the one problem. Second is the stimulation length is a little longer, maybe by 1 or 2 days. In antagonist protocol, you expect a trigger within 9 or 10 days. But if you are using non-agonist protocol, you expect trigger somewhere around 11th day or 12th day. So this is the difference between long agonist and antagonist protocol with the same dose of gonadotropin. So what is the balance between two? So third protocol is agonist stop protocol. That also you can do. So in this protocol, the agonist is stopped once the patient gets the menses. And still, if you go back to your physiological knowledge, hormonal endocrinology knowledge, once you stop agonist, still for next 9 days approximately or 10 days, the pituitary remains suppressed. Pituitary remains suppressed. So what you can do, You are worried about the oversuppression of the pituitary because you have used agonist and now you have stopped agonist once the menstruation has been started. So you give letrozole 2.5 5 milligram daily for 5 days. Because of this, follicles are not going to be recruited because pituitary is already suppressed and pituitary is going to remain suppressed for next 9 days. But this will increase the sensitivity of the follicle towards FSH because of the androgenization effect. And after that, after 5 days, once you start exogenous gonadotropin, you are going to get a symmetrical cohort without suffering from negative problem or disadvantages of long agonist problem,
What
long
dose
agonist protocol,
letrozole should we give here? 2.5 or 5?
5 milligram.
Thank you.
Okay. So next day you start a gonadotropin stimulation, and then onwards you can consider this cycle as an antagonist cycle. So once the criteria or progesterone prime protocol, whatever. So when the criteria are met, you can add antagonist and you can very well give agonist trigger without any problem. So this is the best, I would say, compromise, best balance between two antagonist protocol and agonist protocol when you want to make sure to get rid of asymmetry.
The
So this
agonist gonadotropins has to be added from day two or along with the letrozole or
no no
after 5 days.
no next day of letrozole, 5 days letrozole, nothing else, and
Okay.
after that next day add gonadotropin.
Thank you.
We start letrozole after stopping agonist, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you.
Sir, we stop the agonist and after 9 days we have to start letrozole, right, sir?
No, no. So you stop agonist when patient gets the menses, right?
Oh, right, okay.
And then you start letrozole.
Okay.
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 So this is about the preventive aspect of the
Is there, sir,
asymmetry.
is there any
Yes,
need to do the hormonal profile again? Because at that time already all will be suppressed.
I'm not able to get it. What you
Like
want to say?
when we start gonadotropins after stoppage of letrozole, then should
Hmm.
we go for FSH, LH2P4 before starting stimulation?
No,
No
because
need.
no need. If the ovary is suppressed and there is no recruitment of the follicle, there is no need.
That sometimes it happens like after estrogen also or OCPs also without giving antagonist on day 2 or day 3 when we go for the hormonal profile, FSH is normal and E2P4 is normal, like well suppressed and normal P4, but LH comes to be around below 10, below 2, sorry, below 2. FS is around 5, 6. E2 is around below 50 and P4 is 0.03. But the LS comes to be below 2, 1.2, 1.45, like this. So what should we do for that? Like we should go start the stimulation, or it is anything indicating problematic or something, because so many patients I have seen now after giving E2, and also I used to give progesterone for 7 to 10 days for recruitment. At that time when we I used to go for day 2 day 3 hormonal profile, everything is normal except LH, that is below 2.
Now LH, if it is less than one, it is a really critical.
Huh.
1 to 2, the trigger failure. Why we are too much worried about the LH? Because we are worried about the trigger failure,
Trigger failure, yeah, yeah.
especially in hyper responder and donor, right?
Yeah.
In asymmet, so these are the reason why we are worried about the basal LH level. So normally, if the LH is less than 2, then I always write on the paper that this patient uh, trigger should be SCG, not the agonist trigger. So accordingly, stimulation I modify. I use HMG and I make sure that C is not responding in a hyper way. So otherwise, what can you do? Tell me. If you really, if you uh,
I
want
usually
a,
do, sir, I
let,
usually do, sir, cancel the cycle on the same cycle. And again, when I repeat in the next cycle, then it comes to be more than 2. Like it is 4, 3, 4. So then I start stimulation.
see, you also know that only
Hmm.
1% of the receptors are LH receptors are required to
Yeah.
be occupied for proper estrogen synthesis.
Yes,
See,
yes, sir.
the LH role of LH is uh, especially it is in the Poseidon group 1, 2, and 4, which we have discussed during conference. Always remember that. Poseidon 1, 2, 4, hypo. These are the patients where you are really worried about the LH activity. In the rest of the patient, the LH activity is sufficient. Only 1% receptors are required. So you should not be too much apprehensive about especially when there is LH level between 1 and 2. If it is less than 1, then also you can stimulate, but you cannot give agonist trigger.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
yeah,
So can you please shortly and quickly repeat the agonist stop protocol? I've written, but I want to just
yeah.
reconfirm.
So agonist, we start mid-luteal phase as routinely, or if it is a OCP uh, uh, overlap, then 1 to 3 days OCP overlap is needed. OCP should not be given more than 15 days total. Once you start agonist, the OCP and stop this OCP after within 5 days or 6 days, patient is going to bleed. Once the
Yes.
patient bleeds, you stop agonist
Okay.
and start letrozole. Letrozole 5 milligram at bedtime, give for 5 days, and next day of letrozole start stimulation and consider this cycle as an antagonist cycle only by all practical purpose.
And
And the
trigger weight?
dose, and the dose of
Sorry,
agonist is 0.5?
agonist that what policy you follow. Normally, I give I give 1 milligram because my overlapping is only just for 3 days. I always overlap with the OCPs. I don't require uncovered agonist because a lot of times there is a cyst formation.
How many
So I
days of
always
you do, sir? How many?
OCP I give 15 days, 15 days, and I
15 days.
cover I overlap last 3 days with 1 milligram of lupride. And as the patient gets menses, I used to make it 1/4, just 0.25 milligram. But after this reading this study of letrozole and this, I have modified. So this is not my own modification, please. Huh? This is not my protocol. This is somewhere I have read recently. So I'm sharing with you.
Thank you.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Like you start OCPs from 15th day of period, sir.
No, I have always start OCPs to always to be started from day 2. Very basic thing. If you want to start progesterone should be start in the luteal phase of the previous cycle. So maybe 16th day, maybe 20th day. Latest by it is advisable to start from 21st day, not later than that. Not later than that.
So instead of OCPs, we can start progesterone as well.
Yeah, you can. Why not? Why not?
Sir, what is
from
your experience?
21st day.
Sorry.
Sir, what is your experience after giving progesterone, the symmetry of the follicles? What is your experience?
Frankly speaking, I always prefer OCPs, and I have very limited experience of progesterone. I never somehow I don't rely on only progesterone.
Sure, thank you, sir. But after OCP, sir, I have one experience when I told them to stop around 15th day or 16th day, the dominant follicle is looking at you. And so many times it has not ruptured, and I don't know, then it becomes a problematic. So
So, but then it is. I'm talking about agonist protocol, agonist overlapping. 3 days overlapping agonist is needed.
sir, sir.
We
Thank
are discussing not only OCPs. We are discussing OCP overlapping
overlapping.
long agonist protocol.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So preventive aspect has been discussed. Now I'm coming to asymmetry when on stimulation day 5. So that is normally stimulation day 5 or stimulation day 6 is our first checkup point, right? May it be antagonist protocol, may it be long agonist protocol in my practice. Lot of new people, especially, lot of anxious girls, new entrant of IVF. They are very much anxious and they keep checking, they keep calling the patient every third day. After starting gonadotropin, they call after 2 days just to see any follicle has been recruited or not, what has happened, whether this gonadotropin is working or not. Please, this is very wrong practice. Don't do that. It will create unnecessary anxiety in your mind. After starting with the correct dose of gonadotropin, you just sleep peacefully and peacefully continue gonadotropin at least for 4 to 5 days. Because before seeing the effect of gonadotropin, because gonadotropin takes for at least 4 days to achieve a steady serum level, steady serum level. So it takes whatever gonadotropin. The gonadotropin take at least 4 days for the acquiring the steady level, and for after that only you can expect the effect to be seen on the size of the follicle. So
Sir, sorry
when we
to
call the
Sir, sorry to interfere. Are you
yes,
sharing your screen also? Because we can just see the pictures of all of us. अभी
no,
तक screen आपकी आई नहीं है, मतलब throughout the session.
but I'm not seen.
You are seen. You are seen, but your laptop screen, if you are actually displaying something, that is not visible throughout.
No, I'm not displaying anything.
Okay, then
I was also wondering what is happening because my screen is absolutely just wait, let's see.
Actually, you have not shared your screen, probably. Share screen you must not have clicked. So your screen is not visible, but you are very much visible. Many of others, some of us are also visible here.
So what you can do for that?
You should, sir, click on the share screen option and down green icon must be in your
share, but I have nothing to share on my screen. So what to do? What do I do?
I think you should first go back on this, and then that share screen option will come, because in our screens it is visible share screen, although we have nothing to share. So similarly, your also.
I think let continue. You are, as far as you are able to see me and you are able to hear me, that's fine.
Okay, sir. We are happy with this, sir. No problems. We don't want to have the laptop screen share. It's okay. Your speaking is enough. No problems. I just thought that maybe you were fumbling with something. So I thought you were reading, wanting to share
Yeah.
something. Actually, we are not able to see
So
anything.
yeah. So what was discussing? Ha. So stimulation day 5. Uh, uh, when you call the patient and on if I have to, I don't want to see any other picture. Just I want to keep them how to do because various pictures are seen your camera. Then I'm get distracted. How can I do that?
सर अगली बार पढ़ के आएंगे अभी हम सब अनाड़ी हैं
Okay. So now suppose it is a antagonist protocol. Uh, then nothing much can be done. I tell you, nothing much. At this point, nothing much can be done. So suppose picture is on stimulation day 5. Uh, those who are in the practice, they may not find so much interesting because, but this will benefit a lot of people who have just started IVF. So on stimulation day 5, suppose picture is such something like this that one follicle is 14 millimeter and rest of the follicles are 9, 10, 9, 10, 9, 10, something like this. Then really it's a troublesome situation and you have to take decision because 10 millimeter follicles means follicles are recruited, but one follicle is 14 millimeter. That means it is asymmetry. So if you continue stimulation, FOI is not going to be good. Follicle, that is oocyte yield. FOI is the best index of your IVF success. So FOI is not going to be good. So if you do not want to cancel the cycle, continue stimulation. Now, second question comes: do I need to increase the dose of gonadotropin? Uh, Here, I would like to increase the dose of gonadotropin a little bit. Why? Because on stimulation day 5, I am expecting the follicle to be 12 millimeter, but only one follicle has reached 14 millimeter क्योंकि वो तो पागल follicle है तो वो पहुंच गया लेकिन rest of the follicles are 10 millimeter. So on stimulation day 5, if the follicles are not, majority of the cohort is not reached 12 millimeter, then I would like to increase the dose. So I would increase by 75, not more than that. But suppose situation was such that the follicle, one follicle is 15 millimeter or 16 millimeter, and rest of the follicles are 11, 12 millimeter, then I would not increase the dose. So having said that, you continue stimulation, but follow the trigger criteria. Now, what is the trigger criteria? The most acceptable trigger criteria are majority of the follicle between 17 and 22, at least more than 15. Now, when there is asymmetry, if you keep stimulating, the top follicle is going to cross 23 millimeter quickly. So suppose it is reaching 23 millimeter and rest of the follicles are have just crossed 15 millimeter, then lot of people think that let us compromise one follicle and concentrate on the rest of the follicle, which is not a true uh, what you call way. I would prefer rather than pulling much ahead. Anyway, follicle output, a follicle FOI is going to be not to be satisfactory. So once the majority of the follicle have crossed 15 millimeter and lead follicle has reached 23 millimeter, I would prefer to give the trigger and see what happens. Suppose for the lead follicle has not reached 23 millimeter still, then I would definitely try to make all the follicles, majority of the follicle at least reach 17 millimeter. So once these criteria are met, I will give trigger and then see what happens. So this is about the antagonist protocol. Now, do you have any question about this?
So in case, like you're saying, one follicle is 23 and others are 15, do you really get, in your personal experience, number of
Yes,
oocytes?
madam. Once the follicles are crossed 15 millimeter, definitely you are likely to get the mature oocytes.
And isn't it M1 or you get M2?
No, 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 mature. I'm talking about mature
Ah,
oocytes, M2 oocytes.
okay.
Usually,
Uh,
I observe that the lead follicle, most of my pickups I see, the first prick which I give is in the lead follicle. And usually I get that one empty. And subsequently, I keep getting follicles. I mean, this is a very
Absolutely.
common thing which happens.
Common. I agree. Totally agree. Totally agree.
So
Totally
why
agree.
does that happen, sir?
Because these जो follicle है वो पागल follicle है. You are talking about asymmetry, ना?
नहीं सर, बिना एसिमेट्री के भी ना, वो पता नहीं एक फॉलिकल ऐसा क्यों होता है कि उसके अंदर का अंडा मर जाता है, या पहले दो के अंडे मर जाते हैं, मतलब जो लीड वाले होते हैं उनके, मतलब ऐसा होता है क्या कि वो
No.
श्रिंक हो
What
जाता है और समथिंग?
I don't know. I tell you what must be happening. I tell you. This is very common occurrence. Very good observation. Why I believe why this happens, because you must have many times it has happened when you aspirate the follicle. If there is a proper equilibrium is not there in the tube, the oocyte which is not reached probably because the larger follicle, the dominant follicle, first we aspirate the fluid, and probably the oocyte comes last, and which is in the tubing, and when we, and by the time, because of it is a large follicle, the first tube is filled up with the fluid, and that oocyte has not reached to the tube, so that gives an empty follicle.
This
And
is what
once
exactly I also thought, that
yeah,
it must be still in the
and
tube, and
and
subsequently
second, and if you observe in second tube, lot of oocytes they will report, okay, now eggs are there.
But
So
sir,
probably
ऐसा नहीं है.
this
This
must
is
be
what
happening.
I also thought, but no. I had pricked 2 or 3 sometimes, the bigger ones, and somehow they are empty, and subsequently they are coming. I mean, I don't know. It's my embryologist who is not able to find it in the lot of fluid, or it is a problem in my suction. But the larger ones, somehow they vanish. I agree with you that sometimes this is happening, that it is still in the tube, but when I'm pricking 2 or 3 in one tube only, then one or two must be reaching there. But I don't know. I
Maybe
mean,
yeah, you are right, because ultimately what you are seeing is a follicle, fluid filled cavity,
maybe yes.
fluid filled. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that does not necessarily prove that they are harboring a viable oocytes. Viable oocytes.
Thank
So
you.
one more thing I want to ask, that if the number of follicles are less, and sometimes we get E2 on 10, day 10 or 9 is less. So the number of oocytes does corresponds to E2, I think, and we get number of oocytes according to E2 level only, not number of total follicles, but they are more, not corresponding with the E2. So
No, madam. This is not absolutely true. Um uh, Traditionally, you all believe that whatever E2 you get, you divide by 200, divide by number of the oocytes, and if it is 200 or plus 200 to 300, then that perfectly matches. Or you can say, suppose E2 is 2000, then you expect 10, you are going to get 10 oocytes. If it is a 3000, then you are going to get 15 oocytes. No, that's not true. That's not true. Because uh, the optimum estradiol level per oocyte pre-ovulatory oocyte I'm talking about. It's somewhere around, the ideal is 300 to 400 picogram, not 200 picogram. It is 300 to 400 picogram. So many times it happens that good quality follicles, even if they are 6, 7, still you get the P2 2400, 2200. Of course, I do not measure very routinely, but yes, I know it happens.
So what is the
I
best?
normally measure E2 on the day of trigger only and only I am confused about whether to continue with the cycle, whether whether to subject the patient for oocyte pickup because the response is such a poor. Stimulation has lasted more than 13 days, or maybe only 2 or 3 follicles are seen. वो भी एकदम मर मर के ready हुए हैं. So in that case, I do E2 level and decide whether should I go ahead if it is some more than at least uh, 500, 600, then I may go ahead. If it is less than that, I will not go ahead. So that is one situation where I do serum E2 level. And another situation, of course, now doesn't come many times when there is a borderline hyper response and we want to take decision whether we should give SCG trigger or agonist trigger or for the purpose of fresh transfer. But nowadays it is not a scenario because uh, we tend to transfer fast only and only uh, maybe 10 dominant follicles are there or less than 10 dominant follicles. If more than 10 dominant follicles, I always prefer to freeze the embryos and transfer. So that situation also doesn't arise. So what is the purpose of doing E2, madam? Anything else you know by knowing E2 on the day of trigger?
No, sir. Only this much. Only on the basis. I do be for the trigger purpose only.
Hyperstimulation also we can judge. If it is 3000, 3500.
Please believe me, the hyperstimulation prediction is better with number of dead follicles. If it is more than 15 follicles, this is more reliable as compared to the E2 level. It is more reliable. Number of the follicles are more reliable.
And sir, what is the optimum best size of the follicle at which we should trigger? 17 or 18 or 19 millimeter?
17 to 20, majority of the cohort, majority should be between 17 and 22. That's the best thing. And more evidences are coming up that rather than giving trigger at lower, say 17 millimeter or 18 millimeter, try to extend and give trigger little later, which is not going to harm your cycle, but may benefit sometime. That's the exact take-home message. You may not get extra oocyte yield. It may not, but the blastulation rate may be better if you prolong little bit. So don't try to give trigger just based on the stimulation day. Okay, 9 days over, 10 days over. Now follicles are more than 17 millimeter. Let us give trigger. Try to see that majority of the follicle between 17 to 20.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah. So we were discussing antagonist protocol. If we continue with the asymmetry, then we suffer. Now, what is the option in antagonist protocol? The another option is you convert this cycle, you give, suppose the follicle has crossed, lead follicle has crossed 15 millimeter, wait for that till the lead follicle crosses 15 millimeter, you give trigger, do not aspirate the follicle, and see after 3 days and possibility of the luteal stimulation. That's another thing which can be done. What else can be done? The third thing can be done is you convert into a random start protocol. treat it as a random start protocol. So what you do in random start protocol? What are the different ways of random start protocol? So one is you start antagonist, continue antagonist, and continue stimulation. Believe me, many times I have done this, but ultimately outcome is not very good. It is like say similar only. So this is another thing which can be done. The fourth cost effective way for this is uh, give agonist. So once you give agonist, within 4 hours, it will reach to the peak level, and which will luteinize the follicle, the lead follicle. But the another thing which is simultaneously happening is because of the agonist, there is a flare effect. So this flare effect is going to develop the follicle, rest of the follicle. And if some of them start growing randomly, then again it is going to be a problem for you. So what is to be done? Give agonist and from next day start progesterone. From next day start progesterone and start stimulation next day of that. So this way you can continue stimulation, progesterone prime protocol following agonist trigger. And this way you can continue and see. Again, results are not going to be very good. So asymmetry is a real problem, I'm telling you. So these are the various way how you can deal in antagonist cycle when you encounter asymmetry at the mid of the cycle. Now, if it is a long agonist protocol, the life is much easier, because the best thing in long agonist protocol is you can afford to prolong the follicular phase without significantly affecting the cycle outcome. That's the one biggest advantage. The second advantage is agonist itself has a positive effect on the follicular growth. Agonist has got positive effect on follicular growth, granular cells, stimulatory effects. Don't confuse. Agonist has got inhibitory effect on the pituitary, but positive effect on the granular cells, which can encourage the follicle to grow. So that is another advantage. So what you should do? Suppose you encounter asymmetry in long agonist protocol, you continue agonist and stop gonadotropin. So if you continue agonist and stop gonadotropin, the gonadotropin which is in circulation will be redistributed among the rest of the follicle. Pituitary will not, because pituitary is blocked, you are giving continuous agonist. So this redistribution, because of the redistribution, an agonist is also continue. And one more thing you should do is start applying testosterone gel. Start applying testosterone gel, which will simultaneously increase the sensitivity of the follicle towards FSH, which is redistributing. So this will cause the the follicle which are lagged behind to grow, and same time the follicle which is asymmetry will not go ahead because you are not exogenously supplementing the gonadotropin. So within 4 days, this asymmetry will be minimized. Suppose initially there was a 5 millimeter difference between two. Now it will become 2 millimeter difference. So then again you start stimulation, and once you meet the trigger criteria, you can give trigger, and your outcome is going to be much better as compared to the antagonist protocol. So this was about the asymmetry when it is encountered at the mid of the cycle in long agonist protocol. Do you have any question?
So in long agonist, I think FY does not improve. Only the symmetry part we can take care of. The follicle number of follicles would remain same. So is it there any other advantage of using long protocol? Because I'm not comfortable with long agonist protocol.
Sorry, you mean you are discussing the advantages of long agonist protocol over antagonist protocol?
Yeah, sorry.
Lot many. I have 3 pages written on that. Lot many. See, long agonist protocol is distinctly superior to antagonist protocol. So that's a separate lecture, a separate discussion. We'll definitely discuss for that. The only advantage of antagonist protocol is you can use agonist trigger, so which will protect you from your patient from OSSS. And this trigger cannot be used in non-agonist protocol. That's the only advantage of antagonist protocol. Rest, lot of disadvantage of antagonist protocol, lot of disadvantages. And another is cycle, the stimulation length is little smaller. I mean, 9 days are sufficient or 10 days are sufficient most of the time. And gonadotropin consumption is little less as compared to long agonist protocol. These are the only two proven advantages. If you get any third advantage, please furnish me the article. But I can furnish you a lot of articles stating advantages of long agonist protocol. Not only peak E2 level, not only follicle output, or not only oocyte quality, uh, it gives a lot of peace to your mind. Peace to your mind. So if you really, the batch formation is excellent in long agonist protocol as compared to the antagonist protocol. If you want to fit any patient at different period of time, they are getting menses on second, for example, 2nd September, 5th September, 7th September, all can be accommodated in the long agonist protocol without any problem, which can never happen in antagonist protocol. So antagonist has got adverse effect on the endometrium. Agonist has got positive effect on the follicle. Antagonist is cell cycle inhibitor. So there are some concerns. Of course, these are theoretical things, but that does not mean that I use long agonist protocol uh, routinely or commonly for all. No, I am also like you only. I also antagonist protocol, majority antagonist protocol. But when it comes to debate, long agonist protocol is definitely better, marginally better than long antagonist protocol. But this consumption of the gonadotropin and cycle length, I do not like. So antagonist protocol we commonly use. I totally agree.
Sir, I'm little confused. If we are finding asymmetry in long agonist protocol on day 5,
Sorry, I think my headphones are not working. Yeah, please tell me. Please repeat.
if we are finding asymmetry on day 5 in agonist protocol,
Hmm.
whatever you have said that we are going to do, we stop the gonadotropins, apply testosterone gel,
Yeah. Hello.
and what? Yeah.
Stop gonadotropin, continue agonist, and start applying testosterone gel, which is to be continued till trigger.
Okay.
And then restart
Wow.
gonadotropin after 4 days.
So won't it
Right.
be effective? Like, can it be taken as it is a costing effect?
Absolutely. Yes, very important question. So, in costing, what we do, we stop everything. Uh, we stop in costing. We stop gonadotropin completely. But so, what happened when they originally studied? They in one arm in long agonist protocol, they stopped gonadotropin also. They stopped agonist also. What they thought, okay, if the gonadotropin we are not giving, what is the role of agonist? Better to stop agonist also, na? Because costing part, because it was a costing part. See, we are comparing asymmetry and costing. In costing and asymmetry, in both gonadotropins are stopped. In costing, even agonists were also stopped along with the gonadotropin. So when they compare, when agonist is also stopped and gonadotropin is also stopped, there is a fall in serum E2 level. There is a fall in serum E2 level. But when they continue agonist and stop gonadotropin, E2 level was not fallen. So they presumed that probably the agonist effect on the follicle, the agonist effect on the follicle, granular cell stimulatory effect is responsible for prevention of the fall in the E2 level, and that promotes the follicular growth of the follicles which are lagging behind.
Sir, one
Have
question
you
I
done
have.
like this, sir, in your practice?
Sorry.
Like posting for 4 days in asynchrony in long protocol, and how are the results after the pickup? Sir?
This has not happened many times because I always believe in correct starting dose. And in earlier practice, a couple of times, this because when I was not very much experienced in deciding the correct dose, not able to decide, I was treating all the PCOS same. No, both all PCOS are not same. If it is a milder PCOS, you need to start with a different dose. And if it is a severe PCOS phenotype 1 and 2, you need to start with the standard dose of the gonadotropin. So I used to make a mistake initially. So then there was a hyper response and then costing and all those. Then over a period of time, I learned that no, both PCOS are different and they need a differentiation when you decide a starting dose of the gonadotropin. That's one thing. Second thing, why this type of situation of costing does not arise routinely? Another reason, there is something called early costing. So when you are using long agonist protocol, whenever the lead follicle is 15 millimeter and you are seeing at least more than 15 follicle, small other follicle, at that time, when your E2 level is 1500 or more, I'm repeating, when the lead follicle is 15 millimeter and altogether some more 15 follicles are seen and your E2 level is 1500, that's a time for costing. You have to do the costing of the cycle. That is called early costing. If you do early costing, then your cycle outcome is much better as compared to the late costing. As far as the prevention of OHSS is concerned. See, here we are discussing asymmetry. We are not discussing the prevention of OHSS. In asymmetry, your gonadotropin which you are going is into the circulation. In asymmetry, whenever you measure on stimulation day 6, the serum FSH level is always more than 20. Always more than 20, which is not a case otherwise. So all the FSH receptors are occupied, still the follicles are not growing. So you need to increase the sensitivity. You want to redistribute the gonadotropin which is into circulation to occupy the receptor sites. So you need to create a more receptors, and for that purpose, testosterone gel is applied.
Sir, one question I have. You have told about luteal E2 antagonist protocol. Once we have given 3 doses of antagonist, can we start letrozole on the next day, or we should wait for 24 hours to start letrozole?
We can start letrozole immediately. Problem nahi. There is no problem.
Sir, it's already suppressed FSH-LH antagonist.
Fine. Yes,
Right.
fine.
If you
But then we
start,
don't see the purpose of starting letrozole is just to androgenization of the follicle,
yeah.
which can happen at the time. But what happened? Uh, so it is basically for androgenization of the follicle.
Mm. And also starting the recruitment after.
No, recruitment is not going to start because it is under the suppression, agonist driven suppression. Once you even after stopping the agonist, the suppression lasts
Antagonist.
for.
I'm talking about antagonist. Luteal E2 antagonist protocol.
Oh, sorry. Luteal E2 antagonist there. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I was
no,
under the
no
stop protocol
problem.
impression.
No
Okay.
problem.
So in luteal E2 antagonist protocol, uh, you want to
Because
start you want to start letrozole.
After stopping antagonist.
After going
I
because
see
antagonist
if you
half-life.
in index, if you want to co-administer oral drugs, maybe clomiphene or maybe letrozole,
Yeah.
after luteal E2 antagonist protocol, I would prefer after getting the menses, you should do it.
Yeah, after getting menses only.
And let the effect of antagonist wears off
vanish,
because
30.
it also takes some 1 or 2 days.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. Like day 2
Yeah.
or day 3 after we should start letrozole or clomiphene citrate.
Yes. Yeah.
One more question, sir. Like how you decide what dose should be started in PCOS cases? Like in which PCOS, what are the parameters you see and then decide how much dose you should start?
Say I don't have to repeat the dose which your starting dose of gonadotropin. Still, because many times we have discussed. Fine. Again, I'm discussing. So how, because it will be boring for many of the people who are well experienced and in the material. So in nutshell, if I have to say that the PCOS which is milder and PCOS there are severe. The severe PCOS are androgenic PCOS and ovulatory PCOS. So that is phenotype 1 and 2 or A and B. In phenotype A, all three features are there. Anovulation, hyperandrogenization, androgenic PCOS, and PCOM, a follicle arrangement like PCOS. In phenotype B, it is a anovulation and hyperandrogenism. In phenotype C, anovulation and PCOM, and phenotype in phenotype B, anovulation and androgenism, phenotype C, hyperandrogenism and PCOM, and phenotype uh, 4, only PCOM arrangement is there, and plus anovulation, not hyperandrogenism. So the most friendly PCOS are phenotype 4. So when phenotype 3 and 4, these are comparatively milder PCOS, and phenotype A and B are severe PCOS. Severe PCOS, they have got AMH more than 7, 8, at least more than 7. And milder PCOS, they have AMH somewhere between 3.5 to 7, 8. So these also differentiate milder PCOS and severe PCOS. The severe PCOS have got high basal LH level more than 15, 16, 18. So these are severe PCOS. In milder PCOS, the basal LH level is somewhere around 10. This is arbitrarily, not exactly accurately. This is somewhere near what normally we get. So if it is a milder PCOS, we reduce the dose of gonadotropin, standard dose of gonadotropin by 50 units if it is a milder PCOS. That we don't do when it comes to a severe PCOS. The peculiarity of the severe PCOS, they need a higher starting dose. They are poor responder PCOS. They need higher starting dose. But once very once the follicles start growing, this is very thin line. They have tendency to more prone to OHSS, more prone to OHSS. So severe PCOS, many times we have to step down, not costing exactly, but use the step down protocol. For recruitment, we need more FSH, and once the follicles are recruited, immediately we have to taper down on stimulation day 5-6. You have to taper down the dose of the gonadotropin. So in nutshell, severe PCOS requires standard dose, starting dose, sometimes maybe higher dose. Sometimes addition of medroxyprogesterone start from the beginning or antagonist from the start from the beginning or antagonist pre-treatment before starting gonadotropin because severe PCOS requires special treatment for the suppression of the LH. Which is not a case when it is a milder PCOS. In milder PCOS, reduced dose is enough.
Thank you, sir. So now I got one
Can I add
patient,
one
22
point?
AMH. 22
Sorry.
AMH. Now I have one patient at 22 AMH. But there is no only PCOM features and hyperandrogenism.
So these are the see. If you have time, you should pre-treat this cycle by giving metformin and minoxidil and vitamin D and folic acid and coenzyme Q10. All those pre-treatments should be done for 2 months, and then you start stimulation. And when you start stimulation, you should pre-treat with the antagonist for 3 to 5 days. And after this, once this LH reaches to the basal level, then you start stimulation. This PCOS will and treat this PCOS as a milder PCOS.
Sir, what because LH was 22, so what I have given letrozole for 21 days.
Not bad idea. Not a good idea.
Not a good idea. So then
Then
I
what
have
happened?
to. So then this after stopping letrozole, can I give preluteal anti?
But why? What was the rationale of giving letrozole for so long, 21 days in severe PCOS?
Like
You do not. You are going for IVF cycle.
yeah, next cycle. Like this cycle I have
Next
given.
cycle.
Hmm.
Then how it is going to help letrozole?
I thought,
If you
sir,
want,
LH
if you want
little
a
bit
recruitment of the follicle, if you want a recruitment
not
of the follicle in the index cycle, then extended letrozole protocol is fine. But if you do not want a recruitment of the follicle in the current cycle, why letrozole pre-treatment is never required for severe PCOS?
okay, I have done a mistake, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Can I add one point to the starting dose decidement?
Yeah. So normally, what we do, I follow normally this. Now, of course, nowadays the scenario is changed, and most of the people now it is a most of us they have started believing couple of facts, which was not at the initiation when we started IVF. The understanding was different, and we used to think that all the patient needs the individualized dose for IVF stimulation. But nowadays we decide how I decide nowadays. We know that fact number one, when we get more than less than 10 follicle, then and then we will be able to transfer fresh. The moment we get more than 10 oocytes, 10 dominant follicles, 10 oocytes, then normally I do not want to transfer the embryos fresh. So I want to freeze the cycle. That's fact number one. Fact number two, as per the Sunkaras and other studies, the cumulative pregnancy rate out of one stimulation is best when you have the maximum follicle output rate. To, to get the maximum follicle output rate, you need to start with the higher dose of gonadotropin without when you are not worried about OHSS. So if it is not PCOS, I would prefer to start with little higher dose of gonadotropin when it is a first stimulation cycle. I know this is not a right thing in especially Poseidon group 4 because Poseidon group 4 is uh, uh, elderly patient with diminished ovarian reserve where such a higher dose is not going to be fruitful. But in India, I am using a gonadotropin which is quite economical. I don't use menopur. I don't. So for me, the cost of 300, 150 and 300, there is no much difference. 25 rupees difference, not more than that. So my standard starting dose is either 300 or 450. Since last couple of years, maybe post-COVID or maybe mid-COVID, from mid-COVID only, what I've realized that the dose schedule which is prescribed in the various studies is not applicable to the Indian patient. And we need to give little higher dose of gonadotropin whenever you are using the Indian HMG, standard HMG. I'm not talking about menopur or other thing. I do not have experience of menopur, so I cannot comment on menopur. But rest of the HMG I'm talking. So we need to give a little higher dose of HMG. Being a ART bank, we keep stimulating lots of donor, and in donor also the dose requirement has increased. So the taboo which we were keeping to restrict the dose up to 300 only is no more applicable. If you restrict yourself to 300 only, then your follicle output rate is going to suffer, and which is going to give a lesser cumulative pregnancy rate out of your stimulation. And in India, most important thing is how much pregnancy can you give in out of one stimulation. So if it is not PCOS, please start with the higher dose of gonadotropin only. Do not worry. If if you think that the follicle, uh, the especially I'm talking about Poseidon group 2 and 3, start with the higher dose only. But if it is Poseidon 4, then try to reduce the dose. Why? Because if you, when the follicles, enter follicles are less, and if you start with the very high dose of gonadotropin and continue with that, very high chances of progesterone elevation, very high chances of progesterone elevation, and which will prevent you from fresh transfer. And unnecessary, you will have to freeze the embryos, which will be one or two embryos, and for that you need to freeze the embryos. So whenever it is a poor responder, I always prefer to transfer fresh. And that's the reason why I have to judiciously decide the starting dose of gonadotropin. I do not like to give very high dose, in, especially in Poseidon 3 and 4. 4 for sure. 3 in first stimulation, I may give higher dose because with the purpose that if I get one more oocyte, it will be beneficial because these are younger patient, likely to be quality to be better. So if I get one oocyte, then it is fine. Uh, so, but ideal way which previously we used to follow was standard dose 150 unit. If the age is more, add 75. If BMI is more, add 75. If BMI is less, reduce 75. If uh, fibroid and peritoneal disorder, endometriosis, adenomyosis at 75. If PCOS, reduce 50. If severe PCOS, keep the same. If the previous response to the stimulation somewhere else or with you was poor with the whatever dose, add 75. This criteria we used to follow before. But nowadays, we have tendency to start with the little higher dose than required overall. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Sir,
So,
does higher dose affect the
Yeah.
quality of oocyte?
A very important question. Uh, there are controversial reports. The effect of higher dose on the quality of the oocytes. So both reports are there. But what I have observed that when you go give excessive higher dose, suppose you start with a 600, 750, something like this, irrational higher dose. See, I have never crossed 450. Please, huh? Do not take wrong message. Never cross 450. So suppose you start with the 600 in grid of getting oocyte and not to cancellation of the cycle, reduce the cancellation of the cycle. Yes, you will be successful in reduction of the cancellation of the cycle. But because of such a higher dose, your progesterone will be too much elevated. And when the progesterone on trigger day is elevated more than 2.25 or 2.5 without more number of follicle. See, if progesterone is 2.25, when the follicles are 40, fine, it is not going to affect the oocyte. But when the follicles are less, 4 follicle, and your progesterone is 2.25, that's not good. Because ultimately what matters is a progesterone per follicle index, PFI, progesterone follicle index, which should not be too high. So in such patient, when the progesterone contributed from each follicle is very high, it is suggestive of bad quality oocytes. And even if you freeze these oocytes, embryos, sorry, and transfer in the FET cycle next time, these embryos are not going to give the good results. So everything has to be rational. It should not be irrational. So what I have recommended that try to elevate your dose little bit from your routine dose. You will get the best of both. But do not be irrational. Do not cross 450 in any cases.
Thank you, sir. That was wonderful. PFI.
Yeah. Any question? Or can we stop?
So the purpose of coasting, which we were talking, usually what I understand, the coasting is something which we apply when we want to prevent OHSS.
Absolutely.
Here the coasting thing came up to improve the quality of the FOI also. The number.
Reducing the asymmetry, precisely reduction of the asymmetry.
Is it really practiced for that also?
Long protocol. See, this protocol should not be, it's not meant for antagonist protocol. This is for long agonist protocol. And very few people practice long agonist protocol. So, and after long agonist protocol, to come across the asymmetry on stimulation day 5 itself is very rare. So this is the rarest phenomena.
What I remember from your earlier teaching or my earlier teaching is that coasting should not be done more than 2 days. I mean, then it affects the
Max 3 days. Max 3. Yes, you're right. If following the costing, if the E2 level falls beyond 60% of the pre-costing level, again that you need to cancel the cycle because that's not good.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
And costing,
so
if costing is going to be extended more than 3 days, then also you should cancel the cycle. Costing should be maximum 3 days. Within 3 days, the E2 level has to come below 3000.
So of late, I've just noticed in my, I'm from South India, like Salem. Just noticed the number of days of stimulation, like for everybody, for me, it's crossing around. Standardly, it's becoming 11 or 12 days of stimulation. I usually give them 300. That's a dosage, even for a normal responder. But I just feel the days are a little bit more. But the quality is good actually. But I just thought if you prolong more, the quality might decrease. But I find there's no difference in the quality of your oocyte. But it's better if I do 1 or 2 days extra, just go with the flow of the growth of the follicle. Is it okay, or am I predicting it in the wrong
Absolutely
way?
okay. Absolutely okay. No, no, absolutely okay. Because earlier we used to believe that okay, 9 days stimulation means done. No. If you are not met the trigger criteria perfectly, please extend the stimulation. It is not going to be disadvantageous for sure. It will be
Okay.
advantageous getting more number of oocytes. Maybe implantation rate may increase, may not increase, but you are not at loss except the extra dose of gonadotropin which you have used. So gone are the days. I don't believe that the stimulation should be absolutely finished within 9 or 10 days. No, you can go up to 12 days, sometimes 13 days also.
So
But you
can I
must get
take
a
it?
trigger criteria.
Yeah. Can I take it like my starting dose is 300. As you've been saying, nowadays it's like the dose is a little bit high. Can I make it 375? Is it better choice?
For sure, yes, step down is always better because what happens? What see why I am saying this step down in IVF is better rather than increasing on stimulation day 5. Better to step down, start with the higher dose so that uh, uh, at least whatever follicle they have reasonable sensitivity of the FSH will start growing. And once you think that okay, they have acquired the dominance and they have crossed 14 millimeter, 13, 14 millimeter, then you can afford to step down because even if you stop the gonadotropin, the follicle keep growing for next 4 days. They need to keep rising for next 2 days. So last 2 days you are not worried actually. If you even if you decrease the dose, make it half, make it one third. There is no problem. Absolutely no problem. So better to start with a little higher dose of gonadotropin, and that's a good idea. And I keep doing same only. And see why this idea came. They compared the long-acting RFSH with the daily dose of RFSH. Of course, that is not available long-acting 7 days long-acting RFSH with in India, or if it is available, I do not know. It is available.
No, sir.
It's not available.
No,
So what
not
they,
available.
yeah. So very interesting finding what they observed that in the patient where they use a long-acting RFSH, the incidence of progesterone elevation was dramatically reduced as compared to the daily dose. This is also RFSH, this is also RFSH. Then why this should happen in the same dose? So they realize that when you are using a long-acting RFSH, initially there is a peak, and gradually the level drops down. So in the terminal part of the stimulation, the FSH is going less. The FSH is going less. So our stimulation pattern should be similar if you really do not want progesterone elevation, irrespective whether you want to transfer fresh or do not transfer fresh, our stimulation pattern should be step down only. Start with the higher dose and then reduce the dose rather than starting with the low dose and then stepping up at a higher dose, provided you are not dealing with the PCOS. You are not dealing with the PCOS. This is the bottom line of the stimulation.
So I
So
have a
any day,
question.
as you just after the dominance, you can just after 14 millimeters, you can cut down. You mean to say that's a like
Yeah, not exactly 14 days, but last 2 days to for sure you can cut down.
cut down? Okay, thank
Yeah.
you, sir.
So my question is regarding endometrial lining preparation in HRT cycle. I have a patient, she's ongoing, 45 years, and I had given her letrozole. Uterus was little adenomyotic.
HRT cycle, you said how it is letrozole?
Sorry?
You said HRT cycle.
Yeah, for FET, the patient is for FET.
No, so it is not HRT cycle, letrozole cycle.
Letrozole I had given previously to reduce the adenomyosis.
Okay.
And then I didn't wait for her periods because her LH, E2 were all falling in the criteria in which I could start the preparation. But it is day 16 today. Her lining is 8 millimeter, but the flow is suboptimal. So triple line is not there. So can I wait for 2-3 days more, or is there any criteria that prolonging the duration of the preparation will affect the implantation?
See, after 17 days of estradiol exposure,
right,
marginally, very minuscule, marginally the implantation rate is reduced, which is little more significant after 28 days. So really, you should try to wrap up within 17 days of estradiol exposure, maximum 28 days.
So I should discontinue if today it is not proper. I'll discontinue, and then from cycle day 2, I'll again start.
Yes. But then before that, you have to make sure why this happened, why triple line is not there. So better to have proper transvaginal sonography, and if it require office hysteroscopy can be done.
Yeah, everything has been done. She had previous conception also. It was missed abortion. Didn't have the viability. Twins she had.
So in IVF, many times we see intercycle variability as far as the response to the stimulation is concerned. Similarly, in endometrial preparation, also I have observed. Sometimes it is cycle to cycle variation, because we are not measuring all the hormones which are affecting in the endo. So if you're not happy, cancel the cycle, change the route, change the method of preparation, and try next time, rather than
I want
pushing.
to ask whether I can start straight away from this cycle only. Like I'll stop, she'll have her periods and again start with Proganova, or just wait for some more time.
Now she is on HRT cycle and cycle day 17 days, 17.
Yeah.
And so you have to withdraw the bleeding, ne?
Yeah.
You have to give progesterone for withdrawal and fresh start next time.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. I think I need to attend another webinar, which is at 11 o'clock, some different subject on different subject.
Thanks a bunch.
So I take your leave. Yeah. Thank you.